You ever meet those people who jump at every little thing? Like they flinch when a cabinet door creaks or panic at a horror movie trailer? That was never me. I used to think I was just wired differently. Fear wasn't something I felt, not really. I could sit through the scariest movies, play survival horror games with the lights off, walk alone in the dark without breaking a sweat. I liked that about myself. It wasn't just about the thrill, it made me feel solid. Like there was a wall between me and all the irrational stuff other people let get to them. I'd go to haunted houses with friends and come out smirking while everyone else was still catching their breath. Girls thought it was cool, that whole nothing phases me thing. It was a shortcut to confidence, or at least it felt like it. People I knew would talk about dreams that shook them up, nightmares they couldn't shake the next day. They'd say things like it felt so real, and I'd nod, but I never really got it. My dreams never stuck. I never had one that crawled under my skin. So when I first heard about sleep paralysis, those stories where people wake up but can't move, see things that aren't there, I thought it was interesting. Yeah, but not something I could picture happening to me. It just felt like one of those weird fringe experiences, like winning the lottery or getting struck by lightning. I think back to that now, and wonder if maybe I wasn't fearless. Maybe I just hadn't been introduced to the right kind of fear yet. But that would change, way sooner than I expected. Cammy talked about her dreams like they were these glitchy indie films no one else had seen. They never made sense, not fully. She described these mashups of places we'd been and things we'd seen, but rearranged, distorted, like a memory that had been tampered with. She'd say it felt like her house wasn't hers anymore, like the walls were watching her or the floor would drop if she stood in the wrong spot. I remember once she told me her dreams would grab onto real stuff like actual pieces of her day and mix them in. A radio ad, the smell of her shampoo, something she overheard on the bus. It all got scrambled up into these sleep movies that felt more alive than they had any right to be. Sometimes she'd wake up thinking something awful had happened, like really believing it, and carry that panic with her all day. Other times she'd forget something real even occurred, like her mind had filed it away under just another dream. I listened, sure, nodded along. But deep down, I didn't think it meant anything. I thought it was just stress, maybe too much caffeine or whatever. That kind of stuff always sounded like the brain being overly dramatic. You start focusing too hard on things like dreams, and your mind starts getting noisy. Still, I can't lie. There was something about the way she told it. The quietness in her voice, like she wasn't even sure she was supposed to say it out loud. It stuck with me in a weird way. I didn't know it then, but I'd come to see those dreams differently. Not just stories, not just her imagination running wild. I didn't know that some of them weren't dreams at all. The text she sent that night wasn't dramatic. It was just a few words. No emojis, no extra punctuation, just a flat kind of, "Hey, can you come over?" I remember staring at it for a second, wondering if I should ask what was wrong, but I didn't. I just threw on a hoodie and headed over. It felt like one of those nights where someone needs you but doesn't know how to say it. Her street was quiet when I pulled up, not a single window lit. It felt blank. I remember noticing that. The kind of detail you don't think about until after, when you're turning the night over in your head, trying to figure out what you missed. Her room was dark, except for the dim glow from a salt lamp in the corner. She was lying on the bed facing the wall. I called her name just once, soft, but she didn't move. I figured she was asleep, or maybe had just fallen back asleep after texting me. I didn't want to wake her up, so I sat down on that white stool she kept near the vanity. Same spot I always picked when I was over. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling. Mindless stuff, but there was this weird pressure in the room. Not a sound, not a movement, just something about the air, like it was holding its breath. I couldn't place it, but it made the back of my neck itch. I kept telling myself I was just tired, that I was overthinking it, but now I wonder if I already knew, not consciously but deep down, like some quiet part of me was picking up on something the rest of me didn't want to see. It wasn't loud. That's what gets me. It was quiet in that way that makes you question whether you even heard anything at all. Just this soft stretch of wood shifting under weight, one creak, then another, a pause in between, like like someone testing their next step. I stopped my game mid-swipe and just listened, but nothing followed. Not immediately. Silence came back in heavy, the kind that presses against your ears like it wants you to not notice things. I told myself it was just the house. Old houses do that, right? Settle in weird ways. I even thought maybe a raccoon had found its way onto the roof. I'd heard that can happen. I've repeated that excuse so many times since that night I could probably say it in my sleep. But I know what I heard. It had weight, like a person trying to move quietly. Not animal scurry or wind creak, but actual steps. Measured, slow, almost careful. And what still bothers me is I didn't do anything about it. I didn't call out, didn't get up to check. I didn't even turn my head all the way. I just sat there, glued to that little white stool, fingers stiff around my phone, pretending everything was normal. Like if I didn't acknowledge it, it wouldn't be real. There's this trick your brain plays sometimes when something feels off, but you're too tired or too unsure to react. You start filing it away under "not my problem." That's what I did. I let it slide, just background noise. But even now, when I lie awake some nights, I can still hear those steps. Not loud, just enough to know I wasn't imagining it. I don't even remember looking up. I just remember the sound stopping, the stillness cracking. 1 second she was lying there, silent and still, and the next, it was like her body was yanked by invisible strings, just shot upright, stiff and wrong, like something was controlling her from the outside. Her eyes were open, too wide, not blinking, but there was nothing behind them, no recognition, just this flat, hollow stare that went straight through me. Her mouth was moving, but it wasn't words. It was like sound without shape, muffled, panicked, like she was trying to scream through a wall of water. I stood up so fast the stool behind me tipped and hit the floor. I didn't care. I went straight to her, already thinking, okay, this is it. This is one of those sleep paralysis things she's always talked about. I figured I'd wake her up or talk her down. But the moment I touched her shoulders, I realized how wrong I was. She was trembling, not just a shiver, this deep, violent shaking, like her whole body was rejecting itself, like every muscle was stuck in fight mode. Her skin was cold, like actually cold, not dramatic, not exaggerating. I've never felt anything like that. It was like her body was here, but her mind was somewhere else. I kept thinking, it's just a dream, it's just a dream, it'll pass. But the way her arms jolted and her neck tensed, it didn't look like dreaming. It looked like survival, like whatever was happening to her wasn't in her head at all. And I just stood there, useless, trying to help, but not really knowing how, because nothing in that moment felt safe. Not her room, not her silence, not even me. She came out of it slowly, like someone waking up underwater. Her arms stopped shaking first, then her breathing evened out, like she was trying to ground herself. She blinked a few times, looked over at me. No words, just this small nod, tight, almost automatic, like she didn't have it in her to talk but wanted me to know it was okay. So I left. I shouldn't have. I know that now, but at the time it felt like the right thing, like I'd done my part. I told myself she needed rest, not company, that maybe me being there was making it worse. I don't know. It felt like the kind of night you back out of quietly. The drive home was a blur. Empty roads, street lights bleeding into the windshield. I kept trying to convince myself it was nothing. A weird night, sure, but just a night. I pulled into my driveway, killed the engine, and that's when my phone lit up. Her name, one message. The hallucinations won't stop. No punctuation, no explanation. Just that flat, shaky sentence sitting in the middle of my screen, like it had been typed fast, maybe with one hand, or like she didn't have time for more. I stared at it way too long. Then I waited for a follow-up. Something, anything. I kept refreshing, watching the typing dots that never came. 5 minutes passed, then 10, and that's when it hit me. That coiled feeling in the gut that says you left too soon. Like the night hadn't ended. It had just paused, like something was still waiting, and I'd walked out before the real part even started. I pulled up and everything was washed in red and blue. You know, the kind of flashing lights that make your chest tighten before you even park? That gut drop, feeling like your body knows something before your brain does. That's exactly what it felt like. There were 2 cruisers out front and a few neighbors standing at the edge of their driveways like they didn't want to be seen watching. I walked fast, didn't even close my car door all the way. I saw her on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, face pale and still. Cammy didn't even look at me, just stared straight ahead like she was still waiting for something to happen. An officer stepped toward me before I could say anything, asked who I was, took one look at me and just nodded like, yep, this is the guy. He didn't take me far, just around the side of the house where it was quieter. Then he said it. There'd been someone in her closet, a man, thin, maybe homeless, quiet, covered in layers that didn't fit, holding a kitchen knife. And he'd already been there, inside the room, when I was sitting there playing a game on my phone. Cammy hadn't been sleeping. She was pretending, too scared to move, too afraid to even speak. She used the noise of me coming in as cover to make a call. I didn't know. I didn't hear her. I didn't notice him. But somehow, just being there froze him in place long enough for her to act. That thought never leaves me. What if I hadn't gone? What if I'd brushed off her text? Or stayed 5 minutes less? Or worse, what if I had tried to open that closet door? I still can't stop asking. You know, looking back on it now, I don't think I realized how fragile everything really was. When you're a kid, you just kind of accept your reality, like however your life is. That's just how life is. For me, that meant a cramped little house on a street nobody wanted to walk down after dark, a mom who was always working, and a grandma who felt more like a roommate than a babysitter. Mom was doing her best. 2 jobs, mostly night shifts, just to keep food in the fridge and the lights on. She'd leave before we got home from school and come back long after we were asleep. Some nights, I'd wake up and hear the front door close around 2 a.m. and realize she made it home okay. That was kind of the only time I felt relaxed. It was just me and my little brother Eli most of the time. He was 4 years younger, which felt like forever when I was 10. But we had our own rooms. Somehow, that tiny house felt like it was made of cardboard. But having a room to yourself, that felt like winning the lottery. Grandma Dolores would stay over when Mom pulled nights. She had this thick silver braid and a no-nonsense way of talking that made people think twice. I remember telling myself that as long as she was there, nothing could really go wrong, that she'd know what to do if anything ever happened. I wanted to believe that, and I did, until the night I stopped sleeping through the creaks in the hallway. That night tore something open, and I don't think I've ever been able to seal it back shut. There was this woman we saw earlier that same day, and I still can't get her out of my head. It was just me and Grandma Dolores walking back from the corner store, same route we always took. The sidewalk was cracked, trees leaning way too far into the street. We weren't even talking, just walking in that kind of comfortable silence we usually had. And then, there she was. This woman barefoot, like she just wandered off from somewhere she wasn't supposed to leave. Her feet were filthy, clothes barely hanging onto her. Everything about her looked broken, like even her joints didn't move the right way. She was kind of limping, but not really, more like dragging herself. Her arms twitched now and then, like she wasn't in control of them. She was talking to herself, or yelling at someone invisible. It was hard to tell. I couldn't make out the words, just this low, choppy mumbling with the occasional burst of something louder. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help it. It was like she didn't belong there, like she wasn't supposed to be part of our world. I remember Grandma noticing her at the same time I did. She didn't say much, just tightened her grip on the plastic bag in her hand, and said, "Keep walking." Her voice was low but firm. That was enough for me. We didn't talk about it afterward. She didn't even bring it up when we got home. But I kept thinking about that woman. The way she moved, the way she seemed out of place, like reality didn't quite know what to do with her. And now I can't help but wonder if that was the warning, and I just didn't know how to read it. That night didn't feel special. There was nothing strange about it, not at first. If anything, it felt too normal. Eli had gone to bed already. He always knocked out early, even when he fought it. His room was across from mine, down the short hallway that connected all 3 bedrooms. I was still up, hunched over this wobbly little table in the corner of the living room, trying to make something out of my cheap plastic Legos. I didn't even care what it was. It was just something to do, something to keep my hands busy. Grandma was in her usual spot, on the recliner by the old TV. She wasn't really watching it, just kind of sitting there with the glow of whatever game show was on playing across her face. Sometimes she'd mutter something when someone on screen got a question wrong, but mostly she was quiet. She always was at night. The house felt dim. Even with the lights on, it never really felt bright in there. The yellowish bulbs made everything look old and kind of sad, and when Mom wasn't home, which was most nights, it felt like the walls sagged a little more. The air felt thicker somehow, like the house knew she was gone. I don't remember the time. The clocks in that place never worked right anyway, and you sort of stopped checking after a while. It must have been creeping into late evening, when Grandma finally said it was time for bed. No argument, just one of those quiet, final statements you don't push back against. So I started gathering up my Legos, still thinking it was just another night. But that was the last night I ever felt that kind of normal in that house. I was the kind of kid who could sleep through anything. I mean anything. Thunderstorms, Eli crying, the neighbor's dog barking at nothing all night. None of it ever pulled me out of sleep, but that night, something did. It wasn't loud. It was this soft creaking, barely there. Like the floorboards were stretching. That old house always creaked, but this was different. This wasn't the kind of noise a house just makes. It was rhythmic, like someone walking, slowly back and forth just outside my door, not going anywhere, just moving. At first I wasn't scared, just kind of dazed, blinking at the ceiling, trying to make sense of why I was even awake. I figured maybe Grandma was up. Maybe she had to use the bathroom, or was checking on Eli. But then it hit me. Grandma didn't move like that. She walked with this certain speed, this confidence, this sound. It was dragging. Careful, too careful. And then I heard it, whispering, not full words, just the kind of low muttering that makes your skin tighten a little, like your brain knows its language, but not meant for you. It wasn't even clear if it was one voice or more, just this soft, frantic sound that didn't belong there. Not at that hour, not in our hallway. I remember lying there, completely still, not out of bravery, just frozen. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to make a sound. I kept telling myself it was just Grandma talking to herself, that it had to be. But even then, somewhere deep in my stomach, I knew it wasn't. Something about that whisper didn't fit. It didn't belong in our house. I still ask myself why I opened the door. Maybe I thought it was Eli out there. Maybe I was just too out of it to think clearly. Or maybe part of me needed to know what I was hearing, to prove it wasn't something worse than I imagined. The hallway light was on, which was weird enough. I didn't remember it being on when I went to bed. For a second, I didn't see anything, just the usual hallway, faded carpet, the bathroom door cracked open, the shadows that always stretched too long down the wall. I was about to close the door again, but then I looked left. She was there, right by my mom's bedroom door, facing the wall, not moving. Her forehead was pressed against the plaster like she was listening to something through it. Her arms just hung there, limp, like she had no idea what to do with them. She wasn't wearing anything, just skin, pale, stretched too tightly over her bones. Her back looked wrong, like her spine was too sharp, like it was trying to push through. Her hair was this matted, dark mess stuck to her neck, tangled like she hadn't washed it in weeks. And then, without moving anything else, not her feet, not her shoulders, her head turned, just her head, she looked at me. I didn't think, I didn't breathe. I slammed the door so hard it rattled, locked it with shaking fingers. My legs almost gave out right there, and I just stood with my back pressed to the door, trying to make myself small. I couldn't even scream. My throat felt glued shut. It was the kind of fear that doesn't make noise, the kind that just sits in you. She started pounding on the door, not knocking, pounding with this rhythm that felt desperate and angry at the same time. Like she thought if she hit hard enough she could just will it open, and she kept screaming this name. Over and over, Kyle. It was all she said, just that name like a chant. Like if she screamed it loud enough he'd answer. Sometimes it sounded like she was crying, other times it was just this raw animal kind of yelling. I couldn't tell what she wanted. I couldn't tell if she was looking for someone or trying to scare someone, or if she even knew where she was. Eli started crying from his room. He must have woken up from the noise. I could hear him through the wall calling out for Grandma in this panicked, shaky voice. I wanted to go to him, but I couldn't move. I just sat there with my back pressed against the door, holding the knob like it was the only thing keeping that woman out. Then I heard Grandma. She wasn't scared, she was furious. I'd never heard her like that before. Her voice filled the hallway, sharp and cutting through all the chaos. I couldn't make out everything she said, but the tone alone was enough to silence anything else. Somehow, some way, she got that woman out of the house. I don't remember the order of things after that. I think she had the phone already, or maybe she called right after. Everything after that point just fades, like my brain didn't want to hold on to it. But I still remember the sound of that name, how she screamed it like it meant something, like Kyle was supposed to be there, like I was supposed to be him. She didn't stick around. I remember hearing her footsteps, bare, fast, uneven, pounding down the street as she kept screaming that name, Kyle, over and over, until her voice got swallowed by the night. By the time the police showed up, she was gone, just gone, like she'd melted into the dark. One of the officers told us it was probably a local, someone high, confused, looking for a house that wasn't ours. Said it happens more than people think. Just bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. But I don't buy that. It never felt random. Not to me, not after the way she looked at me, like she knew me, or maybe like she wanted me to be someone I wasn't, like she was waiting for me to open the door and say something she was desperate to hear. I think that's what stayed with me the most. That weird recognition, like she wasn't lost, like I was. We didn't last long in that house after that. Mom made the decision fast, said it wasn't safe, said she'd find a way, and somehow she did. We packed up and left, like we were running from something, and in a way we were. I didn't sleep in my own room for a long time after that. I'd try, but every creak made me freeze. Every shadow felt like it was waiting for me to open the door again. And I still think about it, all the time. The sound of her feet on the floor, the light in the hallway, the lock that almost wasn't. I don't let myself imagine what could have happened if I hadn't woken up, but I do anyway. I was midway through my midnight shift, bored out of my mind. The pumps were quiet. The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead was my only soundtrack. I'd been staring at receipts and half-drunk coffee for hours, thinking about how nice it'd be to finally crawl into bed in my tiny apartment above the station. Then nothing. 1 second I was scribbling down a price discrepancy. The next, the lights just cut out. No flicker, no warning. The pumps fell silent. The credit readers clicked off as if someone had flipped one giant switch. Just darkness. It felt like the entire world had snapped shut around me. My first thought was, did I blow a fuse? But the breakers in the back room were untouched. Then I figured maybe the storm rolling in had finally done its work, though it was almost midnight, and I hadn't heard a drop of rain yet. I stood there, peering into the black, half expecting the storm to hit at any second. My eyes strained against the gloom, searching for any sign of normalcy. Nothing but shadows. I shuffled behind the counter, my breath loud in my own ears, fumbling for my phone. Of course, the battery was at 10%, and the glow of that screen made the darkness feel even deeper. Every second ticked by like an eternity, and I swore I heard something, just a faint click, but I chalked it up to my imagination. That sudden blackout was the first puzzle piece. But it wasn't the end of my problems. It was only the beginning. After fumbling for my phone and realizing the station system was dead, I knew I needed air, both literally and mentally. So I climbed that creaky ladder to the little loft office, the one everyone jokes about being more like a pigeon's nest than a workspace. In the dark, each rung groaned under my weight, and I kept expecting it to snap. I hate ladders in daylight, let alone in pitch black. When I reached the top, my phone's glow barely cut through the gloom. I stepped onto the narrow wooden floor, eyes darting to the only window screen to the outside. I remember leaning against the screen, inhaling the night air, humid and heavy, promising rain, but offering none yet. That's when I saw it. The screen door was cracked open, maybe an inch. My heart skipped. I'm obsessive about locking that door. Before my break, I double-checked it. Heck, I even tugged on it to be sure. So, did I dream locking it? My head spun with possibilities. Maybe the storm gust snagged it open, but there was no wind up here, nothing but still air. I crouched down to peer through the crack. The station forecourt lay empty, dimly lit by distant street lamps. No one in sight, no footprints on the cement. Still, I felt watched. My mind raced. Someone's been up here. Someone's been in this loft where I thought I was the only one. I froze, listening. Nothing but my ragged breathing and the faint hum of a distant transformer. My phone light flickered as if on its last leg. A wave of dread washed over me. This wasn't just a power outage glitch. It was a sign. Someone had gotten in, uninvited, and was prowling every inch of this place. I pressed my back against the cool wall, every nerve screaming. It was one thing to lose power. It was another to realize you're not alone. And in that moment, the station felt less like a job and more like a trap. I climbed down from the loft office, stomach twisting as I stepped onto the cold, dusty floor below. Every sound seemed louder in the blackout. The drip of an unseen leak, my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. I forced myself to move toward the manager's office, the one room I'd always thought was safest. That's when I saw it. Wood splinters scattered at the base of the door frame, right where the latch should click in. My pulse spiked. I'd left that door locked tight before my shift, double-checked it, even ran my fingers over the handle to feel the click. Now the latch looked bent. The wood gouged like someone had shoved a crowbar in and twisted. I crouched, tracing a finger along the jagged edge. Could the blackout have warped the door? No way, the hinges were solid. My mind refused calm. Someone tried to break in. Maybe they failed, or maybe they got through and moved on. But why leave that mess behind? I backed up and pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. No muffled breathing, no creaks from within. My breath hitched. I spun around, half expecting to catch a glimpse of someone slipping away in the dark. But the aisle was empty. Only my own shadow stretched long under the distant glow of a flashing neon sign outside. My phone buzzed in my pocket, low battery warning. I ignored it, hands shaking as I hovered by the broken latch. Every instinct screamed to run, but curiosity held me there, a sick fascination eating at me. Who was here? What were they looking for? I forced myself to move on, every step weighted by dread. That splintered latch was proof I wasn't safe. Not in the loft, not behind the counter, nowhere. And with the storm still gathering outside, I realized I might be trapped inside with whoever had tested that door. My mind raced with scenarios, none of them ending well. I tried to steady my breathing as I slid behind the counter, every nerve firing. My phone was useless now. Flashlight off, dead. I pressed my back to the cool glass of the storefront window and peered out into the faint glow of the street lamps. That's when I saw it. A tall shape too human to be a pile of debris gliding behind Pump 4. It moved with a deliberateness that froze me. No engine noise, no footfalls echoing on concrete, just a silhouette shifting side to side as if scanning for something. My mind screamed to tell me it was a trick of the dim light, a warped reflection bouncing off the glass, but my gut knew better. I forced my eyes to track it, blinking against the darkness. When I looked away to grab a pen by the register, the world tilted, then I whipped my head back and it was gone. Pump 4 stood empty, a lone beam of streetlight pooling at its base as if nothing had ever been there. I crouched, heart hammering, searching the pavement. No footprints, no scattered debris, nothing to prove I hadn't imagined it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just been watched, studied. My palms sweated against the glass as I replayed every angle. The shape's lanky limbs, the way it paused halfway around the pump as if weighing its next move. My mind darted through scenarios. a lost customer. Unlikely at midnight during a storm blackout, a vandal. Why creep so purposefully? And why vanish when I blinked? I bit my lip, that familiar taste of adrenaline flooding me. A distant rumble of thunder rolled in, rattling the glass, and I jerked upright. The station felt empty, but I couldn't trust silence anymore. My eyes darted back to pump 4, my pulse thudding like a war drum. I knew whatever that was, it wasn't done with me, and I wasn't sure I wanted to find out what came next. I backed away from the window, each heartbeat pounding in my ears like a warning. With no flashlight and the station dead silent, I scurried to the wall-mounted phone by the register. My fingers fumbled over the buttons, dialing 911 with shaky precision. Then I hit hold, hoping to keep the line open until dispatch answered. Instead, the intercom above crackled to life. That static wasn't static. It was long, shallow inhales, like someone breathing shallowly into a microphone pressed close to their mouth. My blood ran cold. I trained in security basics. I'd heard white noise, equipment glitches, but nothing that sounded so deliberate, so alive. I slammed the phone receiver back onto its cradle, rushing to the intercom unit. My reflection in its plastic surface wavered as I knelt, peering inside the grill. No microphone tampering, no open panels, just the station's standard PA speaker. The hissing stopped, and the line went dead. Complete silence. Staring at the wall, I questioned my own senses. Did I mishear? My mind argued logic, old wiring, a rogue signal from the storm, anything but someone messing with me. But a faint echo of that breathy hiss played under my skin. I could almost feel it at my ear, warm and intimate. I swallowed hard, my Adam's apple bobbing. I rummaged behind the counter for a spare flashlight, found only empty batteries and an ancient, faded help wanted sign. Every moment I wasted felt like an invitation. The station was under siege, and the intercom crackle was the intruder's way in, a chilling reminder that I wasn't alone. I pressed my ear to the speaker once more, half expecting the hiss to return. Instead, I heard only my own ragged breathing. Was that worse? At least if nothing responded, I might still have a chance. But I couldn't shake the dread. Someone was somewhere in that darkness, listening, breathing, waiting, and I was running out of ways to call for help. By this point, I'd convinced myself that maybe I was losing it. Power outages and weird noises can play tricks on your mind. But when I crept toward the garage bay door, every instinct screamed that I should get out of there. The thunder was closer now, rattling the metal overhead, and the rain finally began its assault, hammering the corrugated roof. I flicked my phone back on, the weak glow pulsing as the battery protested. Step by step, I edged around a row of dusty shelves stacked with unopened boxes, each one a potential hiding spot. Then I saw it in the dim beam, something pale and still in the driver's seat of the delivery van. My breath caught. I froze. The face was pressed flat against the glass, as if someone wanted to see every detail. Sunken cheeks, eyes wide and white like marbles, lips stretched in a grin that was more sneer than smile. It didn't move, it just stared, and I felt it, that chilling certainty that this was no prank or shadow. My hand trembled so violently that the phone slipped from my grasp. The light wavered as it tumbled, casting frantic beams across the oil-stained floor. I heard it before I saw it, a soft, deliberate sniff, as if the person was smelling the air outside. Then the beam found the face again, eyes following me, dark pools of intent. I pressed myself against the cold brick wall, heart hammering. The van door was locked, good, but I knew locks only delayed what was coming. In that moment, every lesson in self-defense and every police training video felt useless. I was face to face with someone who'd invaded my workplace, my sanctuary, with no aim but to terrify. Lightning split the sky, and the world lit up. For a heartbeat, I saw not just the face but the cramped interior of the van, empty boxes, overturned crates, no obvious weapon, just that grin. Then darkness swallowed the light again. I swallowed against the lump in my throat, pressing my back flat against the wall. I knew I couldn't stay, but the path to safety was back through the station, through the loft, past the office, beside pump 4, and whoever that was, they weren't done watching. The rain's roar filled my ears, and I closed my eyes. Every sense screamed to run, and I did. I didn't stop to think. The rain hit me like a wall the moment I burst through the garage doors, cold, heavy, relentless. Water streamed down my face, mingling with tears. I didn't realize I was crying. My shoes squeaked on the slick pavement as I sprinted toward the highway, each step fueled by pure terror. The headlights of passing cars blurred into streaks of yellow and white as I dashed across the asphalt, gas station pumps receding behind me. My lungs burned with each breath, but I couldn't slow down. Somewhere beyond the downpour, I spotted the small porch light of the Thompson house, flickering, welcoming, damn it, everything I needed in that moment. I reached the gate, hands shaking so badly I could barely unlatch it. My shirt clung to my skin, soaked through, but I hardly felt the cold. Every distant siren, a promise of help, seemed to arrive too late, yet somehow closer than I dared hope. I ran up their narrow driveway, pounding on the door, my voice lost in the roar of thunder. When Mrs. Thompson threw the door open, I fell forward, collapsing on the welcome mat. She screamed, then hushed me as I babbled something about intruders, about a face in the van, about how the station had gone dark. She led me inside, wrapping me in her shawl, her eyes wide. Through the window, I watched headlights and police cars flood the station's lot. Sirens wailed, officers shouting into radios, guns drawn. It was surreal, like I was viewing someone else's nightmare in a grainy, shaky live stream. My chest heaved with relief, but my mind raced with questions. How long had they been inside? Were they still there when I bolted? What was that face doing in the van? Even now, months later, I replay that run over wet pavement in my head. I fill in gaps with guesses, half-glimpsed horrors. There's no neat ending, no closure, just the memory of rain pelting my back and the desperate need to reach a porch I barely knew, all because someone decided to invade my night. And every time I close my eyes, I'm still running. So, this all started a few years ago when I finally moved out of my mom's place. I was in that phase where I just wanted my own space. Nothing fancy, just something that felt like mine. I ended up finding a 3-bedroom apartment above a gas station in Bridgeview. Not exactly luxury living, but it had its charm. Cheap rent, close enough to the city, decent view of the lot out front, and hey, 24/7 snacks downstairs wasn't the worst thing. I moved in with my buddy Connor, someone I'd known since high school, and this guy Tyler, Connor's friend from college who I hadn't met before. At first, it was a bit weird, having this stranger around the place, but it wasn't long before we settled into a routine. We weren't best friends or anything, but we got along. That was enough. The first month or so was pretty uneventful. We were all working odd hours, so the place kind of ran on this loose, shift-based schedule. Someone was always sleeping. Someone was always gaming. Grocery trips were chaotic. The fridge was a mess. It felt like what you'd expect in your early 20s. The kind of chaos you just learned to live with. Nothing ever struck me as off. No weird neighbors, no shady noises in the middle of the night. Just that hum of the gas station below us, the flicker of Connor's TV through the cracks under his door, and the occasional late-night pizza delivery. Looking back now, I realize how easily we all slipped into that comfort, like we assumed the world outside that apartment was going to play nice. But that's the thing about feeling safe. You usually don't realize how fragile it is until something shatters it. It was one of those typical nights. You know the kind, caught up with some old friends downtown. Nothing wild, just a couple beers, maybe 3 if I'm being honest. The kind of night where everyone talks about how they've really been meaning to do this more often but probably won't for another 6 months. You know how it goes. By the time I grabbed a cab and headed back home, it was pushing a little after 2 a.m. That quiet hour when the city still hums but everything starts to slow down. I wasn't drunk, just riding that warm buzz that makes the world feel a little softer around the edges. The kind of haze where your thoughts stretch out and you don't really rush anything. When I stepped into the apartment, everything was exactly how I left it. Tyler's room was empty, door wide open like always when he stayed over at his girlfriend's, and Connor's door, closed with the soft flicker of his TV spilling out through the bottom crack. That flicker was almost comforting by that point. Constant, familiar. I remember standing there for a second before heading to my room, just taking it all in. The stillness, That faint smell of leftover takeout. It was that weird kind of calm you only feel when the rest of the world is asleep and you're the last one up. I did the same thing I always did after a night out, kicked off my shoes, tossed my keys on the desk, and let the TV fill the room while I laid there waiting for sleep to catch up to me. Everything about that moment screamed routine, which is probably why I didn't feel the shift coming. Not even a little. Funny how certain things only stand out when you start connecting dots after the fact, like flipping through a mental photo album and realizing one of the pictures doesn't quite fit. That's what it feels like now when I think about that girl by the pumps. It was maybe 2 or 3 days before that night. I was grabbing something late from the gas station downstairs, one of those lazy midnight snack runs. As I walked out, I noticed this girl standing off to the side near the far pump, not really doing anything. Not on her phone, not getting gas, not headed toward the store, just standing there. She had this thin jacket on, looked way too light for the cold, and this slightly messy blonde hair tucked under a beanie. Glasses. Something about her didn't scream danger, but it didn't scream normal either. She kept glancing up toward our building, not staring exactly, more like quick, darting looks. The kind you do when you're trying not to look suspicious but end up looking more suspicious because of it. I remember slowing down a bit, kind of instinctively, watching her for a second too long before convincing myself not to be weird about it. I told myself she was probably waiting for an Uber, or maybe someone who lived in the building. Happens all the time. But the thing is, I brushed it off, like I always do when something feels slightly off but not enough to sound the alarms. That kind of shrug-it-away gut feeling that never feels urgent until it's way too late. Now I replay that moment way too often. Like maybe if I'd said something, or paid more attention, I don't know. But whatever she was doing out there, it wasn't random. I'm sure of that now. It must have been close to 3 a.m. when the intercom buzzed. I was halfway between awake and asleep, lying in that weird fog where dreams and real sounds bleed together. At first, I thought I'd imagined it, just a blip in my half-dream. But then it buzzed again, louder this time. Then again. I didn't jump up or anything. Mostly because my brain couldn't compute why someone would be ringing a buzzer that late. It's not like we lived in a building where friends randomly showed up in the middle of the night, but there was this other part of me, that quieter, practical part, that reminded me Connor sometimes had people drop by late for weed. He didn't sell a lot, just enough for some quick cash. It wasn't uncommon for someone to swing by after hours, especially on weekends. So I dragged myself out of bed and shuffled over to the intercom. My eyes were still adjusting to the hallway light. I pressed the button and asked who it was, trying to sound alert even though I felt like I was still underwater. A woman's voice came through. Calm, polite, said she was looking for Connor. I didn't recognize the voice, but to be honest, people came and went often enough that I never really kept track. It didn't feel totally out of place. Connor didn't always give people a heads up. Half the time I didn't even see who came through the front door, just the quiet exchange of footsteps. A knock, then the creak of his door opening. So I didn't think too hard about it. I should have, but in that moment, I just assumed it was another random night with another random visitor, and I buzzed her in. I figured I was just doing Connor a solid when I headed downstairs. He was probably too stoned or half asleep to bother answering the buzzer himself. I wasn't thrilled about it, but it wasn't the first time I played middleman for one of his late-night drop-ins. As I reached the bottom of the stairs and got close to the main entrance, I saw her. That same girl from a few nights ago, blonde, glasses, same too light jacket. She was already at the door, standing way too still, not impatient or distracted like most people waiting to be let in. Just still, like she'd been waiting there longer than I thought. I cracked the door open, leaned out a bit, and told her she could come up. I was already turning to go back up the stairs when I realized she wasn't following me. She stayed put, not walking in, not even looking at me, just holding the door halfway open, like she was waiting for someone else. I glanced back, and there she was, still facing forward, her head tilted ever so slightly like she was listening for something, or watching. It didn't make sense, the way she stood there, half in, half out. It made my skin crawl, but not in a loud, obvious way. It was quieter than that, colder, Something dropped in my chest then. It wasn't panic, not yet, but it was this sharp pulse of wrong, like a shadow brushing against something deep in me that usually stays untouched. I didn't say anything, didn't ask her what she was doing. I just turned back toward the stairs and picked up my pace. My only real thought at that point was get upstairs. I didn't even know why, I just knew I needed to. I didn't even hear the door close behind me. That's the part that sticks with me most. How quiet everything was right before it all went wrong. No loud slam, no voice, no warning, just those footsteps. Fast ones, heavy, coming up the stairs like they already knew exactly where I'd be. At first I thought maybe the girl had changed her mind and was hurrying to catch up. But when I glanced over my shoulder, that idea died instantly. It wasn't her. It was this guy, tall, wiry, the kind of thin that makes someone look sick instead of athletic. His hair hung in greasy strands around his face, and his eyes were just blank, like there was nothing in there. Nothing human anyway. And in his hand, something metal. I don't know if it was a pipe or a crowbar or what. I didn't stop to figure it out. I didn't need to. My body just moved, like pure instinct kicked in and told me you're about to die if you don't run right now. So I did. I bolted up the stairs, taking them two at a time. I could hear him behind me, those footsteps pounding harder, faster. I didn't dare look back again. I didn't want to see how close he was. When I reached our unit, I slammed the door shut so hard I felt it rattle in the frame. I leaned against it with everything I had, and a second later he hit it. Once, twice, maybe 3 times, screaming, words I couldn't even hold on to. They just bounced off my skull like noise, angry, frenzied, like he wasn't just trying to scare me, he wanted in. And then, nothing. The silence after that felt even louder. A couple days after it all happened, Connor mentioned something weird. He'd buzzed someone in earlier that same night, said she asked for a guy named Travis. But none of us know a Travis. Not me, not him. Definitely not Tyler. He said it was a girl. Sounded calm, polite, like she knew what she was doing. She didn't come far into the unit, just lingered near the front like she wasn't sure if she was in the right place. He figured it was just someone who got the wrong apartment and didn't think much of it. But when we sat down and tried to run the whole night back, that moment didn't feel so random anymore. That girl, was she the same one I saw? It had to be. Blonde, glasses, that same off kind of stillness, and always near the door, always keeping it cracked like someone else was supposed to come through. That's when it started to feel less like coincidence and more like planning. Maybe they were checking out the building. Maybe they were waiting for someone to be dumb enough to open up, or slow enough to give them a shot. We called the cops, told them what happened. They asked the usual stuff. What did she look like? Did we recognize the guy? Did we have any idea why we were targeted? We had no names, no license plates, no clear motive, just guesses and gut feelings. They took a report and that was about it. And I still think about it. A lot. About how fast it all happened, how close that pipe probably came to cracking my skull, about that girl, Sophie, or Emma, or whatever the hell her name actually was. I haven't seen her since, haven't seen him either, but I swear every time I come home late now, I check every stairwell, every reflection in the glass. I don't think that's ever going to stop.